Hello, everyone. My name is Ezra, but you can also call me eSoup. Um, hi, Landjade. I know a lot of people couldn't make it today because of just various things, and including preparation for Thanksgiving tomorrow. Um, and that's okay. We're gonna have a chill time today. Um, it'll just be a few of us, I think. Um, and I'm really excited to see what we get into today. Last time we left off with, I think Lei Jingjia escaped, but Xiao Qie was like, I'm gonna go after him. I have some kind of plan. He said, I was just looking at it, he said like something like, I'm gonna send him off with great fanfare. So I'm very intrigued as to what he's gonna do. It sounds like it might be extreme, but very fun. Oh, hi, Animal Lover. Hi, Nina. I'm glad you could make it. Good to see y'all. Um, yeah, so Xiao Qie is chasing down Lei Jingjia. Um, I don't know about anyone else, but I had questions about Li Xiong. Um, who I believe they like took as like a hostage, basically. But my question about Li Xiong is like, wait a minute. I see the surname Li. Now, I don't know if it's the same Li or if it's a different Li, because it could be like a different character. But that just immediately raises my alarm bells and lots of questions. Um, and what else happened last time? We had the reunion with Ji Gong, finally, and that was very sweet. Um, there was a lot of stuff about grain. We're hearing a lot about grain. Grain is very important. Um, and so there was some stuff about how Tsujo is gonna like make money and subsist in this sort of weird convoluted way that they can do that by like selling grain and then buying grain. Um, yeah, so and there was something fishy going on that may or may not implicate Xiao Jiming, which I'm hoping that it's not actually him in charge of whatever is going on. I'm hoping that it's like, I forget his name, but there was a guy under him who Xiao Jiming promoted. I'm hoping that that guy is like corrupt and Xiao Jiming didn't actually have anything to do with it, but maybe we'll find out a little more about that. Um, Nina, you're sleepy, so taking the day slow. That sounds great. That's kind of how my day is going as well. Um, but regardless, I'm excited to get into this. So, also, uh, we're on page 63 for chapter 116, which is called Chen Yang. So I don't know what Chen Yang is gonna do or what's gonna happen to Chen Yang. I hope we're good. Hope everything's okay. Um, but I'm gonna get into it. Xiao Qie said he would return in 3 days, and return in 3 days he did. When he arrived at Suzhou's city walls in the middle of the night, the gates were open, with torches throwing bright light over the walls above and below. The Imperial army marched through with their captives, bringing up the rear. Zhou Gui had cleared out the prison on the south side of the city for the Imperial army's use. As he came forward to receive Xiao Qie, he called, "Your lordship has worked hard. The soldiers must be tired after eradicating the bandits. I had food prepared for everyone. This way, please." Xiao Qie dismounted. "How kind of you, your excellency." Zhou Gui followed Xiao Qie in, his smile positively radiant. "I saw General Tantai's report about the bandits you took captive in the east. You've broken them up. I heard your lordship personally went after Lei Jingzhe. This is truly, truly marvelous. Xiao Qie had caught sight of Shen Zichuan in the crowd, and Shen Zichuan had spotted Xiao Qie. A few personal guards followed at Shen Zichuan's heels, with Chao Tianya beside him holding a lantern. They had clearly been waiting a long time. Still addressing Zhou Gui, Xiao Qie said, "We'll have a detailed discussion regarding Lei Jingzhe in your excellency's study tomorrow morning." I just realized I don't have a light on that I normally have on. There we go. Also, curious that we've started the chapter and whatever happened with Lei Jingzhe, we've just skipped past that. Maybe we'll get a flashback. Assuming Xiao Qie was tired from his journey, Zhou Gui nodded briskly. Of course. Kong Ling, the more perceptive of the two, could see they were getting in the way, even if he wasn't accustomed to such relationships. He made some excuses and shepherded Zhou Gui away. Chen Yang stepped forward from among the waiting soldiers to take Snowcrest as the guards behind him all bent at the knee, and exclaimed, "Congratulations to Master on your triumphant return." Xiao Qie loosened his arm guards and unslung the conqueror bow from his back. "Rise, all of you. Have you been waiting long?" Shen Zichuan took the lantern from Chao Tianya and turned to walk with Xiao Qie down the street. "A while." Xiao Qie reached out and plucked the lantern from Shen Zichuan's fingers, while Shen Zichuan took Xiao Qie's arm guards and turned them over in his hands. Xiao Qie explained, "Those are an old relic from a few years back. The metal parts were cast in Libei, and the leather straps on top are made of the same material Chudu supplies to the 8 great battalions. The straps came apart from chafing when I drew the Conqueror bow last time. I'll have to find some way to replace them before I return to Libei." The leather straps used for fastening the arm guards had indeed worn thin. Shen Zichuan plucked at them a few times and said to Chao Tianya, "Take these back." Noting that Shen Zichuan was leading them in the opposite direction of the Zhou manor, Xiao Qie couldn't help but glance back. He looked at Shen Zichuan and asked, "Did we move out?" "Of course. We have to." Shen Zichuan ascended the steps in front of them. "We can't impose on Zhou Gui forever. He gained a grandson at the beginning of the year, and as long as we're there, his entire family is crammed into 2 courtyards. It's too much to ask of them. I had someone make inquiries a few days ago, and this manor here happened to catch my eye." As he spoke, the two of them stepped into a wide alley. Xiao Qie looked down the slabstone path that led to the front door. "It's right off the main street and close to Zhou Gui's place, so it'll be easy to go back and forth. You've chosen an excellent location." "There's one drawback," Shen Zichuan said as he led Xiao Qie across the threshold. "It's too big. We can't fill these courtyards even if we gather all the men we have." Xiao Qie saw a mounting block of stacked brick set up just outside the door. The carved wooden door pillars were elegantly spare, their patterns not as busy and meticulous as those in Chudu and Jueshi, but instead reminiscent of the style favored by Li Bei and Biansha. A manor with 5 courtyards really was far too large for the two of them. It was nearly the same size as the manor Qi Huilian had been bestowed by the throne when he was still Grand Mentor of the Eastern Palace. Xiao Qie and Shen Zichuan had neither heirs nor concubines. They wouldn't be able to fill it up even if they acquired new servants. The stone walls were worn with age, but the double-eaved roof cut an imposing sight without obstructing light. All of it was just the way Xiao Qie liked it. "That's no issue." Xiao Qie took Shen Zichuan's hand as he stepped through the door. "Shifu can take 1 courtyard. You and I take another. The others can share a courtyard, and if more people can join us in the future, we can allocate them according to status." By the time we're 70 or 80, we'll no doubt see every room filled. Oh, Blue, I'm glad you could join. The back courtyard can stay empty, Shenzichuan said, but we'll need men in the rear yard and the side room that's flanking the central room. The courtyards are all connected, so we'll need someone always keeping watch. It'll make shift changes a little harder. Love how they're just casually talking about growing old in this house together. As they toured the residence discussing everything they'd need, Ding Tao walked behind them, recording the various routes in his book. This manor isn't as big as our prince's manor in Chudu, he whispered, but it's way more confusing. If I live back here, it'll take me half a month just to remember the way. What are you afraid of? We don't let you take missions alone, and you always have Gu Jin to lead the way if you get lost. Chao Tianya looked around. This manor wasn't cheap, but my master didn't even blink at the price. How deep are his pockets? Brow creased in a sorrowful expression. Ding Tao added a few more strokes to the page. You don't understand. It's precisely because Jinge is leading the way that we'll get lost. Jinge is an odd one. As a scout, he can remember any unfamiliar place with perfect clarity. But when he returns home, it's a different story. 9 times out of 10, he'll turn the wrong way. Back in Li Bei, he used to wander to another courtyard all the time. I'm telling you, there's a girl there called Cui Lan, a maidservant for the heir consort. She's really gentle. Every time Jinge made a wrong turn, she'd be the one who led him back. She even gave me candy. In any case, humph. Gu Jin hooked an arm around Ding Tao, clapping his mouth shut. Casting a glance at Chao Tianya, he quipped, "Hear no evil." Chao Tianya looked at him in astonishment and applauded softly. I haven't heard anything that's evil. Rather, you've just given up the game. It'll be hard to grow bamboo here, Xiao Jie was saying. I'll look for something else in a few days. He glanced back at the guards. Who's on watch tonight? Chen Yang had seemed preoccupied all this while, but now he promptly answered, just me. The rest of them have been taking shifts on duty these last few days. Xiao Jie knew Chen Yang had something to report to him. He'd sensed it in the moment he saw Chen Yang's expression at the gates. He nodded and didn't probe further. I wonder if it's about his brother. The bath was ready when they returned to the main courtyard. While Xiao Jie washed off the dust of the road, Shen Zichuan sent word for their meal to be warmed. The weather was still hot, and the doors to the main room were wide open, with bamboo blinds hung to keep out mosquitoes. All the window screens had been newly replaced, and on the veranda sat a round-bellied copper basin that housed 2 red carp and 3 or 4 lotuses. The fresh green plants in the courtyard were washed in the warm lamplight from the windows. Chen Yang sat in their midst, somewhat dazed. He was dressed in an old robe. All their clothes were worn from their rushed journey here. Shen Zichuan had asked Zhou Gui's wife for a tailor to take their measurements one by one. Soon, they would all have new clothes to wear. Chen Yang and Zhao Hui were the same age, yet Zhao Hui already had a family and an established career, while Chen Yang was still the chief of Xiao Jie's personal guards and lived together with the other brothers. He appeared the most self-possessed among them, but in truth, he remained rough around the edges. At present, he was sitting under the eaves, acquiring quite a number of mosquito bites, anxiously deliberating how he should report to Xiao Jie. The bamboo blinds lifted halfway. Shen Zichuan, already in his leisure robes, called out, "You've been standing guard outside the city wall every night, and now you're sitting here feeding the mosquitoes. Come in and have dinner with Sa'an." Chen Yang rose and followed him inside. Xiao Chia had yet to finish bathing, but the meal was laid out and awaiting him. It was simple fare. The two of them rarely called for lavish spreads. Now that Jigong was back, he kept close watch on their food. All the proper ingredients to be used and extra nourishment to be taken were prepared according to the recipes he and Chi Huilian had developed back at the Temple of Guilt. This group of personal guards loved to drink, as had Jigong in the past, and the dishes he made to accompany wine were second to none. Chen Yong knelt on the mat while a maidservant set dishes on the small table in front of him. It was quiet in the room. Chen Yong sat with his head lowered and listened as the attendants withdrew. Shen Zichuan took the master's seat. In contrast to Chen Yong's restraint, he was dressed casually. The loose white robe he wore shifted with his movements and revealed his wrists, diminishing some of the remoteness of his exquisite appearance. Like this, there was a relaxing and unpretentious quality to him. When two people spent a long time in each other's company, perhaps they influenced each other subconsciously. In this moment, Shen Zichuan felt to Chen Yang like Xiao Chia when he was quiet, that aura that gradually put one at ease. Worrying too much won't do you any good. Shen Zichuan set down his wooden chopsticks and said, without looking at Chen Yang, "Report the facts, with neither embellishment nor amendment. Tell it to him as it happened. He will naturally have his own interpretation. It's often said that those most deeply involved in the matter lack the perspective to see the whole picture, but that may not necessarily be so. As the one concerned, he understands it far better than anyone else. Perhaps he even thought of this before you ever did." Without raising his head, Chen Yong bowed to him in silence. "If you underestimate him, then you underestimate yourself," Shen Zichuan continued placidly. "He chose each of you out of thousands, but didn't you also choose him? There will still be violent storms to brave, and turbulent seas to navigate in the future. If you continue to vacillate like this at each turn, then, sooner or later, you won't be able to match his pace. They only know Xiao Chia as he was 6 years ago. You've seen a Xiao Chia who has been tempered and sharpened over those same 6 years. Chen Yang, Morning Sun, and Zhao Hui, Rays of Dawn. Both of you are named for the light of the sun, and Xiao Chia and Xiao Jiming are both wolves of Li Bei. What are you afraid of? Don't let your time in Chudu confuse you. All of you have long been evenly matched." Though Chen Yang pressed his face into the mat, an indistinct sob escaped his throat, and his fingers curled slightly. He said nothing for a long while. He thought his own circumstances were of no importance, so he had never mentioned his heartbreak. Although he hadn't suffered a gross injustice as Gu Jin had, he still recognized the cold treatment he had received back home. It had been a relief to leave Li Bei beside Gu Jin. He had been tossing and turning these past few days, precisely because he didn't know how to bring this up with Xiao Chia. Years ago, when Chen Yong had left Li Bei for the first time, he was in no way inferior to Zhao Hui. He always tried to do his best in everything. He was most afraid of being perceived as lesser than Zhao Hui, and so he kept raising the bar for himself. But in the half-month he had spent back home, he had done his best to avoid Zhao Hui entirely. He was afraid. At some point, he began to feel that he had already lost. Ooh, ouchie. We have art. Very beautiful, sad art. Chen Yang was Xiao Chia's trusted aide, and one point of many on which outsiders would compare the brothers Xiao Chia and Xiao Jiming The moment he was overtaken by such a fear, those under him, such as Gujin and Ding Tao, would inevitably feel its effects. If their own chief saw them as low, how could they stand on equal footing with Xiao Jiming's guards? More than anything else, this would be the real blow to Xiao Qiye, who was about to find himself under the harsh scrutiny of Li Bei. Xiao Qiye was not anyone else, not Xiao Fengshu, not Xiao Jiming. He was only himself. His most arrogant traits were his fearlessness in forging ahead and his determination to win. For Chen Yang, following him was akin to chasing after the wind in a tempest. Shen Zichuan was right. If Chen Yang felt fear now, then sooner or later he would be left behind. The one he had chosen at the very beginning was indeed the young Xiao Qiye, who'd had the guts to remain alone as a hostage in Chudu. Hair still damp, Xiao Qiye appeared in the main room, his leisure robes draped around him. He was taken aback at the sight of Chen Yang bent over the ground, shoulders trembling. Yet when he looked at Chen Zichuan, he merely spread his hands and gave Xiao Qiye an innocent look. That is the end of the chapter. I know, Blue. Poor baby indeed. We are on page 73 for chapter 117, which is called Favor and Intimidation. I wonder who's doing the intimidation. Xiao Qiye's loose outer robe fell casually open, exposing the unfastened collar of his inner garment. When he settled before the low table, his figure obstructed most of the lamplight. His skin was still damp, but after wiping his face with a clean handkerchief, he felt more comfortable. Tapping a finger thrice on the floor, he said to Chen Yang, "What's the matter? Straighten your back and spit it out." Chen Yang scrubbed his face with his sleeve and sat up straight. "We encountered some difficulties when we returned to Li Bei. I wouldn't presume to make any judgment, so I'm reporting it to Master first." Xiao Qiye picked up Shen Zichuan's chopsticks and began to eat, listening as Chen Yang recounted what had happened. Midway through his recitation, Shen Zichuan excused himself from the table to take his own bath. When Xiao Qiye finished the rice in the bowl, he sat for a moment without reaching for anything else. "How is Gujin's injury?" he asked at last. "We called for a physician right after we left the camp. Gujin's fever broke during the journey, but the wound on his back is in a bad state. Jigong Shifu took a look at it last night. He told Gujin to abstain from certain foods and left him with some instructions, but said he'd recover with a month's rest." Chen Yang paused. Fortunately, his eyes and ears were unharmed. Xiao Qiye had gathered plenty from Chen Yang's plainly worded statements. Readalong Banner is patrolled daily by base camp in the eastern mountain range. It was originally quite a distance away from the stomping grounds of the Hanma tribe, but Gujin's vanguard squad retreated there. This means the Li Bei armored cavalry has been pushed back considerably. My father and Shifu's battles aren't going smoothly. Through the bamboo blinds came the cacophony of insects in the summer night. Xiao Qiye gazed into the candle flame. Da Ge's inability to lead the troops is a heavy blow to the Li Bei armored cavalry, he murmured. My old man came out of retirement so quickly because he had to boost the troops' plummeting morale and soften the impact of the word defeat. But he hasn't stepped on the battlefield in person for almost 15 years. Meanwhile, for those 15 years, his opponent, Amor, has never left the front lines with the Hanma tribe. Times have changed. Relying blindly on my father is not the path to victory. I often say there shouldn't be a change in personnel right before a battle. Even the most skilled general builds rapport with his soldiers over time. All of my father's subordinates from 15 years ago have been replaced, and those who could return to the field beside him are few and far between. The troops he's leading now belong to a new school of officers and soldiers who are used to Daga's style of command. Both sides need to adapt to the other at such a critical time. It's no easy feat. When Xiao Fengshu had established the Libe armored cavalry, those words, armored cavalry, were the best description of Libe's forces. In those days, Libe had been unable to keep pace with the mounts of the Biansha horsemen. Xiao Fengshu had responded by making their cavalry heavier. He not only equipped the soldiers in full armor, he also armored the horses of Libe. An army like this was a terrifying vision in a direct frontal assault. Like a mighty river rushing down a mountain, any collision could annihilate their foes on impact. There was no time for the Biansha horsemen to draw their scimitars before the horses of Libe were upon them, and even if they managed it, they couldn't pierce that armor. Not even the ferocious Hanma tribe was willing to wage a drawn-out war with the armored cavalry. Their light and swift mobility was their only remaining advantage. Xiao Fengshu had continued building on this foundation, piling more weight on the Libe armored cavalry, until he eventually forged the army into a genuine wall of iron. When Qi Juyin led the Qidong garrison troops through the 5 commanderies, their horses' hooves boomed like thunder. Yet the approach of the Libe armored cavalry was not merely thunder, but an earthquake. The sound alone sapped their enemies' courage. For 5 or 6 years, no one could find any weakness in the Libe armored cavalry. However, Amor of the Hanma tribe was also a fearless warrior who, through constant engagement with the Libe armored cavalry, soon learned how to turn their weight to his advantage. As long as the Hanma tribe's horses were swift enough, they could loot, retreat, disperse, circle back, and surround their foe once again. They were like a swarm of blood-sucking flies. Though they couldn't penetrate that solid and sturdy armor, they emerged from their battles unscathed. When Lei Jingzhe had gathered his own bandits together to harass the imperial army, he had imitated the Hanma tribe's tactics against the Libe armored cavalry. Unfortunately, he didn't have horses that fast, nor soldiers that strong. It was around this time that Xiao Jiming took command of the Libe armored cavalry. The first decision he faced was whether to retain the heft of the Libe armored cavalry's armor and weaponry. In the eyes of his father's generals, he was a greenhorn, still wet behind the ears, and his refined and humble personality was something these veterans, used to Xiao Fengshu's brash style, found hard to accept. He made a completely different decision than his father. He reduced the weight of the Libe armored cavalry, thinning that wall of iron, but allowing them more maneuverability. With this, the Libe armored cavalry shifted from a heavy cavalry into a cavalry only slightly more armored than the standard. Under Xiao Jiming, Libe became newly characterized by their speed. Hence came the moniker, Iron Horse on River Ice, for this was also the fundamental reason he was able to gallop across the borders of 2 territories in a single night. Xiao Jiming's cavalry could match the Hanma tribe's speed, and coupled with the continued refinement of their battle formations, they became tougher to deal with than they'd been even under Xiao Fengshu. This new school of generals were all hand-picked by Xiao Jiming. Their style was compatible with Xiao Jiming's, and they were used to working with a commander who was receptive to their suggestions. They might respect Xiao Fengshu greatly, but they couldn't necessarily adapt to fighting under him. Respect alone did not win battles. The light in their eyes as they gazed up at that legendary god of war would inevitably dull as he and his officers butted heads. In the end, the glorious Prince of Libe would fall from his pedestal, fading slowly into obscurity before being washed away in the tides of change. When that time came, the legend of the Libe armored cavalry would also come to its end. They would become no more than a mob of disorganized soldiers plagued by internal discord. The armored cavalry's dependence on centralized command was its advantage, but it was also to its detriment. Out of all commanders in the Zhou Empire, Qi Juyin had studied the Libe armored cavalry most closely. She was well aware of the drawbacks inherent in the Libe armored cavalry's over-reliance on its commander-in-chief. After she became the Grand Marshal of the 5 commanderies' garrison troops, she had tried her best to avoid leading Qidong down the same path. She put considerable effort into establishing the Qidong General's Barracks, which took in men with the potential to lead. Her confidence in her absolute hold over military authority gave her the ability to delegate power. She allowed Lu Guangbai so much authority because Lu Guangbai was capable. Moreover, she understood what kind of generals were suitable to lead which troops. In Xiao Qie's eyes, Qi Juyin was the most qualified person in his generation to hold the position of Qidong's Grand Marshal. Anyone who acquitted themselves well on the battlefield could become the general of an army, but few had what it took to be a Grand Marshal, commanding multiple armies from all quarters. If one were to rank the present 4 great generals of the empire, Qi Juyin would no doubt be placed at the top. She had discerned the Libe armored cavalry's greatest weakness long ago, and had reminded Xiao Jiming of it. Xiao Qie's ostracization was inevitable. With a hand on his knee, Xiao Qie poured off the melted candle wax into a small porcelain plate. It touched the tips of his fingers, but he liked this kind of searing pain. He watched as the flame flickered. Chen Yang, when I left Libe at 17, I asked my sister-in-law when I would be able to return home. My question brought tears to her eyes, and she cried in her room the whole night through. When my brother and I mounted our horses the next morning, she stuffed so many cakes from Libe into my bundle it was bursting, and even hid a flask of on horseback inside. She said she didn't know when I would be able to return either, but that they would always be waiting for me in Libe. I entered the capital as a hostage, all because Dago won a battle. I hated Shenwei to the core. At the time, I thought the fall of Zhongbo was to blame for my imprisonment. I never thought myself any better than my brother, but like him, I was attached to the Hongyan Mountains and the stables. I used to lie on the grass and listen to the sounds from the earth under my ear. When I left, I wanted to take the very soil of Libe with me. Once, I went to the top of the tallest tower in Chudu and looked toward the horizon, hoping for a glimpse of Libe. But not even Meng could see the mountains of our homeland when he flew up into the clouds. I understood then, for the first time, how remote a possibility it was that I could return home. I learned all sorts of things from Shifu, but it was only in Chudu that I began to understand the truths behind his teachings. I'm a man of ambition, and Chudu is the instructor that taught me to restrain that desire. My encounter with Lanzhou was no accident. He was the last line of defense that kept me from reaching my breaking point, as well as the indulgence and freedom I've regained. Xiaoqie sketched a finger through the air, as if drawing a line. I'm complete now. The parts of me that were broken, that were lacking, are encased with steel. Now that I've left Chudu, I don't plan to stop. 20 years ago, 10 years ago, my father and brother both made the best choice they could at the time. Today, it's my turn. The challenges we face may not always be from our enemies. We're in the middle of this beautiful speech right now. I'm kind of surprised that Xiao Qie is like sharing all this. I think it's because it's like he's just like bearing his soul and he doesn't really have to do that. It just but it's very beautiful. I acknowledge the excellence of my father and brother. I cherish and revere them. But that sentiment is reserved for the part of them that's family, not the part that commands the Li Bei armored cavalry. You and I are wolves that have strayed from the pack. We return now not to submit to the will of others, but to claim our rightful places. Xiao Qie leaned closer, his gaze as sharp as a blade. Li Bei cannot suffer another defeat. This concerns more than just the Xiao clan. I understand that, as do my old man and Daga. Who should inherit Li Bei's iron wall? Anyone can, as long as they can shoulder the responsibility. I'm not simply going home. I'm going back to Li Bei. Guo Wei Li is a seasoned general. He knows better than anyone your positions and duties. Not injuring Gu Jin's eyes and ears was his most merciful warning to me. So pull yourself together, Chen Yang. Our opponents are all hardened veterans who have seen countless battles, but no battle in this world is fated to be lost before it's begun. All those impregnable defenses and impenetrable encirclements are only a facade. I'm going back, and I want to go back to a Li Bei armored cavalry that truly belongs to me. Chen Yang's fingertips trembled. He had knelt until both his legs were numb. But now that tingling sensation shot up his spine. In the face of the Xiao Qie, his fear was swept away by the fervor coursing through his blood. So, Guo Weili, that was the general whose name I was forgetting. I can't figure out, like, I guess the implication is, like, he did what he did as, like, a warning, or, like, kind of trying to send a message to Xiao Qie, like, it's not going to be so easy for you to just step in and come back to Li Bei and, like, take care of things. I'm a little confused about that, but that's what I'm going to go with for right now. Which it puts it in a different perspective from, like, the possibility of Xiao Jiming, I don't know, secretly colluding with the enemy or something crazy like that. And it's more just like, we don't even know if Xiao Jiming wanted him to do all that. But yeah, kind of, it's like a warning. Also, I'm excited and nervous for Xiao Qie's and Xiao Jiming's, like, reunion, like, them personally seeing each other again, because it has been so long. By the time Shen Zichuan emerged from his bath, Chen Yang had taken his leave. Xiao Qie was lying on the settee by the window, staring into space. The window was ajar, and the delicate fragrance of lotus blossoms outside wafted into the room. Head pillowed on one arm, Xiao Qie looked up through the gap at the starry sky. Shen Zichuan blew out the candle and tossed his outer robe over the back of a chair. He drew an icy cold finger across Xiao Qie's cheek, tracing a trail of thrilling heat. Xiao Qie had missed Shen Zichuan too much. Every inch of him he longed for with deep urgency. Behind his fatigue thrummed an irrepressible anticipation. Though he had been on horseback for days, sleep was suddenly impossible. The fierce possessiveness in his eyes was a thing understood only by the two of them, and it sharpened quickly at the brush of Shen Zichuan's finger. Absence, it was said, made the heart fonder. In the near future, there would be countless such absences. For now, Xiaoqie wanted to consume every single moment they had alone together. He wanted to invade Shen Zichuan, to have him every possible way, and drive deep into him again and again, leaving his own scent behind, while Shen Zichuan's enveloped him completely. Perhaps there were many ways to express love, but at this moment, they desired only the most intense. The city wasn't big enough for both of them. It blew. Whoa there, bud. I know. Very, very, I don't know, kind of moron moment there. Maybe a little bit less intense. Xiaoqie reached a hand up to pull down the bamboo blinds and cover the window. His Lanzhou didn't need the moonlight looking in. That lithe softness, exposed to air, needed only one gaze upon it, Xiaoqie's. We were joking about the thing with Delight in Discord, and now he literally closed the bamboo blinds to cover the window. That will make sense if you've seen a certain GIF in the Discord. But that's really funny to me. Shen Zichuan straddled Xiaoqie as they kissed in the darkness. Their hot breaths mingled, heat spreading down their necks, then their chests, until even their abdomens burned. Shen Zichuan's neck was flushed, and Xiaoqie took this for silent acclamation. Like Shen Zichuan's small tremors, these were unconscious reactions he couldn't suppress. The force of Xiaoqie's desire made Shen Zichuan raise his head and gasp for air. Shen Zichuan pressed a palm to Xiaoqie's chest, attempting to stop his aggressive advance. But the gleam of tears in his eyes beneath lowered lashes only seduced Xiaoqie, goading him to unleash his ferocity and indulge his cruelty. Do anything you want. This was what Shen Zichuan's eyes announced to him. Xiaoqie surged up and held Shen Zichuan securely atop him. Neither of them averted their eyes as their breathing became ragged. Racked by wave after wave of shivers amid Xiaoqie's merciless assault, Shen Zichuan's loose hair spilled over his shoulders as he grasped at Xiaoqie's clothes, crushing the fabric in his fists. You need a little more flesh on you, Xiaoqie rasped, Lanzhou. Damp strands of hair stuck to Shen Zichuan's face. For a moment, he couldn't find his voice. Sighs tumbled from his lips as he reached out to steady himself on the settee, but Xiaoqie took hold of his hands. He didn't wait for Shen Zichuan to get his bearings before entering him again with languid tenderness. A slow, gentle rock after a tumultuous and satisfying ride. Or so it would have been if he hadn't thrust so deep. Shen Zichuan let Xiaoqie keep him in this position as he took all of him, his mind reduced to mush in this unforgiving onslaught. His eyes, misty and half-lidded, became a still more potent aphrodisiac to the one beneath him, his lashes glistening with evidence of pleasure as Xiaoqie pressed into every part of him. Sa'an, Shen Zichuan murmured whichever name came to mind. Ah, yeah. Xiaoqie's brow was damp with exertion. Shen Zichuan dipped his head and nudged along Xiaoqie's temple with the tip of his nose to disperse those beads of sweat. Wickedly, he called out, Arlong. Xiao Qie stopped. He grasped Shen Zichuan's jaw and tilted his face up, then kissed him hard between gasps. Those calls threw the last of his control into disarray, dispelling all those secret anxieties. Xiao Qie forgot them all. He needed nothing else. Only Shen Zichuan. They couldn't indulge to their heart's content on the settee. At some point, the bedding was pulled down from the bed onto the carpeted floor. Even the pillows were drenched by the time they were sated. Shen Zichuan's eyes drifted closed. He was soaked to the bone, utterly spent. Xiao Qie levered himself up on his sturdy arms, still sheathed inside him as he pressed his forehead to Shen Zichuan's and panted lightly for breath. Lanzhou. Xiao Qie's sweat-sheened forehead slid down to Shen Zichuan's jaw and nuzzled into the crook of his neck. He repeated, muffled, Lanzhou. Shen Zichuan laid a hand on Xiao Qie's hair. They clung so close as to be inseparable, fitting together like notes in perfect harmony. Shen Zichuan shifted his legs, motioning for Xiao Qie to lie down on top of him. Instead, Xiao Qie tightened his arms around his waist. His embrace so desperate, Shen Zichuan found it hard to breathe. He ruffled the back of Xiao Qie's head and breathed a light puff of air into Xiao Qie's ear. Little wolf pup, he called. Xiao Qie bit him. Shen Zichuan let out a husky laugh. Sensing wetness trickling out of him, he said, "It's leaking out." Xiao Qie turned the bite into a kiss. They ground against each other, slippery with the evidence of their passion. It seemed Xiao Qie's desire would rear its head once more, drawing soft sighs from Shen Zichuan. Thinking he had been treating Shen Zichuan too roughly, Xiao Qie had intended to stop for the night. But after one look at the glint in Shen Zichuan's eyes, he drove back into him instead. He stroked Shen Zichuan's cheek and slipped 2 fingers into his mouth, gently pinning Shen Zichuan's tongue. They entwined their limbs, panting in unison as they studied each other's reactions. This time, their lovemaking was less frenzied than their first coupling, an endless, tender embrace. When Xiao Qie finally slid out of him, Shen Zichuan could no longer make a single sound. All his wordless moans had been devoured. He grasped Xiao Qie's jaw to bring him closer as the waves of heat broke over him. Tears he couldn't hold back soaked the hair at his temples. Xiao Qie finally lowered his body to press against him, skin on skin. They were both exhausted, and Shen Zichuan could barely keep his eyes open. Yet his hand still cradled Xiao Qie's jaw. Xiao Qie let out a quiet laugh as he leaned down to capture his lips once more. They kissed for a moment, then fell asleep together at last. Xiao Qie draped over Shen Zichuan. Xiao Qie sank into a dreamless slumber. Blue, were you, and now that scene is over, you said, his war against the sun continues. Choice. Because if it's a stylistic choice, then this might deserve a whole analysis. Do you mean the choice to constantly talk about Xiao Qie, like, covering a source of light, like, from hitting Shen Zichuan? Like, he's protecting him? Or you're talking about the scene? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Whoa there, bud. He's just so intense. Oh, yeah. Point. I am like, I got lost before choice. He is, so you're talking about, like, the way his intensity was written. I was reading that, and I was just thinking, like, wow, this is so far, like, the longest and most detailed sex scene in the series. And then I kept reading, and it kept happening, and I kept thinking that. So, but I had a thought. I don't know about what you were talking about, but I did have a thought about this scene, and it was like towards the beginning of it, when it said something about Xiaoqia being able to get a reaction out of Shen Zichuan, and it occurred to me, like, that maybe, like, part of his desire for Shen Zichuan is because Shen Zichuan is someone who acts so well and is so, you know, closed off to most people and, like, sort of has to be, like, strategically. And so it's a way for him to get an honest and genuine reaction out of Shen Zichuan that, like, is hard to do. And so I was just thinking about that. I think we've had, like, indications that Xiaoqia feels that way before, but it just occurred to me at this moment. So that was a scene break. They woke after sunrise the next day, later than usual. Xiaoqia had just returned from chasing bandits. No one would have castigated him for resting, but he still rose quickly. Their lovemaking had provided an outlet for the emotions he might otherwise have suppressed. Feeling Xiaoqia stir, Shen Zichuan made to get up too, but Xiaoqia covered him with the quilt and kissed him back onto the bed. The garrison troops. Shen Zichuan struggled half-heartedly, heavy with sleep in the dim light, his eyes still closed. I'll go later, in the afternoon. We'll discuss Suzhou's garrison troops later, Xiaoqia said. I want to settle the Lei Jingzhe issue with Zhou Gui first. I've also been wondering about that. We still don't know what happened with Lei Jingzhe. Also, this is very cute. 2 hours, Shen Zichuan sighed. I'll be there in 2 hours. Xiaoqia caressed his cheek. It doesn't matter, even if you go tomorrow. There's no hurry to get it done in the next few days. Go back to sleep. I'll be back for lunch at noon. Tell Shifu to come too. Shen Zichuan murmured in acknowledgement, though it wasn't clear if he'd heard anything Xiaoqia said. After a bath, Xiaoqia changed into fresh robes. He didn't call for anyone to go in and tidy the room, but instructed Ding Tao and Gu Jin to stand guard in the courtyard and wait for Shen Zichuan to rise. Then he left, taking Chen Yang and Chao Tianya with him. Zhou Gui was in his study, deep in discussion with his advisors. When he saw Xiaoqia had arrived at last, he hurried out to greet him and dismissed the rest, leaving only Kongling in the room to serve tea. Xiaoqia appeared sterner than usual today, all his supposed youthful frivolity entirely absent. Standing in the doorway, he cut such an intimidating figure that Zhou Gui and Kongling didn't even dare breathe too deeply as he strode in. He clearly had something on his mind, and got to the point almost as soon as he took his seat. I let Lei Jingzhe flee east. I expect he'll make it to Dunzhou within 3 days. Kongling had done a head count of the bandits the night before, and had grown uneasy when he found Lei Jingzhe was not among them. Hearing this, however, dispelled his misgivings. He considered them to be on familiar terms with Xiaoqia by now, so there was no need to be as reserved as before. He coughed lightly. Presumably your lordship has your own plans. Zhou Gui still had doubts. Lei Jingzhe is a conniving character. Since you've let him go, does your lordship plan to keep him for your own use? That man is too shrewd to submit to anyone. There was no warmth in Xiaoqia's eyes. Though we've captured the majority of the men Lei Jingzhe brought with him to Suzhou, he still has men loyal to him on Mount Luo. In any case, Even if we dispose of one Lei Jingjia, there are plenty more like him. Eradicating them all before Cizhou builds its own garrison troops would be next to impossible. Kong Ling thought back to what Shen Zichuan had said a few days ago and nodded. That's right. It's just as the vice commander said. As long as food remains scarce in Zhongbo, there will be ordinary folk who turn to banditry. There's no way to solve the problem with force alone. Lei Jingjia lost several of his most trusted men and escaped by himself. Even if he has a silver tongue, he'll be hard-pressed to clear himself of suspicion among his fellow bandits, Xiao Qie said. I'm going to give him a helping hand. I'll turn him into a spy for the Imperial Army. A man so hated, all the bandits of Duanzhou and Duanzhou revolt against him. Lei Jingjia is no fool. He won't sit still and wait for death. Whatever action he takes, the bandits will be thrown into disarray and too preoccupied with infighting to set their sights on Cizhou again anytime soon. Your lordship has made all these plans with Cizhou's future in mind, Kongling observed. Is it because you are preparing to set off for Libei? Xiao Qie turned his teacup around. Time waits for no man. Libei is waging a war against Biansha. I shouldn't remain in Cizhou any longer. Moreover, Qidong has delayed making any move against us for 2 months already. Once Qi Juyin arrives, it will be hard for me to leave, even if I want to. After I go, Lanzhou will continue working hard to help Cizhou. As I said before when I set out with the troops, I won't poke my nose into anything concerning the garrison troops of Cizhou. But if you have need of the Imperial Army, just ask Lanzhou to send me notice. I'll be sure to arrive within a day. This statement was certainly worth pondering. At the very least, to Kongling's ears, it sounded like both a favor and a threat. Xiao Qie said they should ask Shen Zichuan to inform him. This implied he wouldn't heed any requests from Cizhou alone. Shen Zichuan would be the one to decide whether or not Xiao Qie led his troops back. However, Shen Zichuan wasn't someone who could be easily fooled. Cizhou couldn't take advantage of the distance to deceive the Imperial Army into deploying troops to aid them. Yet, beneath that, Kongling sensed another layer of meaning. Unsettled, he wiped sweat from his brow. The message was this. If Cizhou dared lay a hand on Shen Zichuan, Xiao Qie would be at their gates within a day. Okay, I think now I see maybe this part is what the chapter title, Favor and Intimidation, is kind of about. I'm trying to think about how it could apply to the rest of the chapter, and maybe it could also in some way, but this feels like the most fitting moment for that. That's the end of the chapter, and it's just now about to be 4 o'clock. So that means I'm going to take about a 10-minute break, and when I come back, we will be on page 87 for chapter 118, which is called Past Affairs. Wonder what that is referring to. So I will see y'all shortly. Hello, I am back. We are back. Oh, wrong bookmark. Wrong place. Yep, we are at chapter 118, Past Affairs. Not daring to grouse even to himself, for fear Xiao Qie might sense something amiss, Kong Ling dabbed his brow and took a sip of tea in an attempt to cover his discomfort, an action that only made it more conspicuous. He nodded. Your lordship, not lordship. I can read, I promise. Your lordship is returning to Libei to defend our borders against the Biansha tribes. Cizhou couldn't possibly trouble the Imperial Army any more than it has. In any event, with the vice commander here, even if Lei Jingzhe makes another attempt on the city, he is sure to fail. Zhou Gui, who hadn't gotten the hint, simply said, the march of an army over long distances is beset with difficulties. We're here to the south of Libei precisely so we can watch Libei's back. If Cizhou can be of any use to your lordship in the future, only say the word, and we will do our best to assist. As for the bandits we've taken into custody, how does your lordship wish to deal with them? Several of the men we captured were once bandit chiefs in their own right on Mount Law. They won't do us much good dead, so we may as well release them alongside Lei Jingzhe. Xiao Qie already had a plan in mind. Earlier, I bribed a few of the bandits to spread the rumor that Lei Jingzhe had been released by the Imperial Army. In half a month, we'll let them break out of prison and flee with those men, Ding Niu and Liu are. Cizhou need only send enough soldiers in pursuit to drive them back to Dunzhou. Plenty of their own had died under the swords of the Imperial Army. Once they conclude that the Imperial Army cut them off in the east due to a leak from Lei Jingzhe, they'll want their revenge. Zhou Gui and Kong Ling nodded in unison. Knowing Xiao Qie would return to Libei soon, Zhou Gui determined they must discuss the matter of military provisions while he was still here. During their discussion a few days ago, Shen Zichuan had firmly turned down their offer of additional provisions for the Imperial Army next year. Facing Xiao Qie, Zhou Gui deliberated over his next words. Cizhou originally planned to provide the Imperial Army an allowance of 16,000 dan of grain after spring of next year. We know this is a small amount, but it's a token of appreciation from Cizhou to your lordship. When I told the vice commander of this, he said he sympathized with Cizhou's difficulties and urged us to instead sell the grain at a good price to Chazhou, then use the money to fund the reconstruction of our defenses. We've thought it over the past few days, and we still feel we must show our gratitude. Your lordship, there is a piece of vacant land to the northwest of Cizhou. It's the former site of the Beiyuan hunting grounds. Initially, we planned to till this land and plant crops, but the soil wasn't good enough for rice. All we could sow were some vegetable seeds. Rather than continue to leave it fallow, we thought it'd be better to gift to your lordship to turn into a field for horses or to build a new military camp, as you wish. The imperial family's use of the Beiyuan hunting grounds preceded that of the Nanlin hunting grounds. As Xiao Fengshu had risen to prominence in the north, the imperial family opted to change the venue of the autumn hunt to a locale closer to Chudu, where they could feel more at ease. The Beiyuan hunting grounds encompassed no small area. In total, they were even larger than Xiao Qie's spacious military drill grounds at Mount Feng. This land was far enough west to pose a threat to Dancheng, and close enough to Cizhou to provide support to the city. Not to mention, it sat just outside the boundaries of Li Bei. It was an excellent position from which to advance and retreat. Xiao Qia's interest was piqued. He was wary of the Qidong garrison troops to the south, especially with Shen Zichuan remaining behind in Zhongbo. Without a place en route to anchor his troops, he would have to rush back and forth between Li Bei and Suzhou. Never mind him alone. If he ran around like that with tens of thousands of men in tow, not only would he expose their position, he'd draw unwanted attention from all sides. But Xiao Qia was broke. He had scrimped and saved to build the military drill grounds at Mount Feng, which, while not as imposing as the 8 Great Battalions' grounds, had cost him a pretty penny all the same. His noble title was all but useless now, and there was no one to pay him a salary. His manors in Chudu were no more than faraway piles of brick and timber. Even digging a handful of copper coins out of his pockets would prove difficult for him at present. The little jade bead earring Shen Zichuan was currently wearing on his right ear had been hand-polished by Xiao Qia himself. In the past, Xiao Qia wouldn't have flinched at losing an ivory fan or two. Yet now, seeing that Lanzhou's little bamboo fan had been stained, and having promised to replace it, he was already thinking of making it himself. That is so sweet. I know it's out of necessity, but that is also so sweet. Since Xiao Qia had yet to say a word, Zhou Gui thought the offer was not to his liking. He added, "The place is big. Although it was used for hunting in the past, I'm afraid it's fallen into disrepair over the years, and the servants have long run away. But the perimeter wall still appears to be solid. If your lordship takes charge of it, you'll only need to fortify it a little more and you'll be able to use it." "Your lordship helped Suzhou out of a terrible predicament," Kongling said. "We would never try to fool you on this matter. We mentioned this place to the vice commander yesterday as well, and the vice commander said he would personally make a trip up to take a look when he next finds the time. He seemed to like the idea, too." They had been rather occupied last night, and Shen Zichuan had had neither time nor opportunity to bring the matter up. Furthermore, Xiao Qia had left in a hurry this morning, while Shen Zichuan was still groggy with sleep. "The place is good," Xiao Qia said with no change in expression. "It'll make a suitable camp for the Imperial Army. Lanzhou and I both like it. You needn't be so courteous, but thank you. We'll take it." Blue, time to start calling Lanzhou Daddy. Shen Zichuan rose from the bed and pulled on a plain white set of day robes. He had planned to go out, but the marks their lovemaking had left behind were too obvious. The bites on his chest, waist, thighs, and collarbones could be covered with clothes. But he was too sensitive to pleasure. When they overindulged as they had last night, the redness at the corners of his eyes would often linger throughout the next day. Ding Tao was standing on the veranda, feeding the red carp in the basin. He was prattling on and on, telling Gujin a story. As he gestured, the fish bait in his hands slipped into the basin, where the 2 red carp gobbled it down. By the time Gujin realized what was happening, one of them had already become so bloated it had gone belly up. Before Gujin could raise a hand to cuff the boy, Ding Tao sensed trouble. He hastily stuffed the remaining fish bait into his pocket and fled toward the main room, yelling, "Gongzi, bad news. Jinge fed the fish to death." Shen Zichuan picked up the sweet soup from the tray a maidservant had brought in, handed a bowl to Ding Tao, and told him to sit under the eaves and drink it. He turned to Gujin. "How are your injuries today?" When Gujin saw Shen Zichuan wearing wooden clogs, he knew he wouldn't go out today. Bowing and greeting, he answered, "Much better. The physician came as scheduled to change my bandages. Since Gongzi is staying in, Shall we ask the kitchen to prepare the meals now? Clusters of green foliage decorated the grounds in the courtyard, while the shadows of flowers adorned the wide panels of the 2 open doors. The weather was fine and clear today. Though it was not yet noon, it was already starting to get warm. Cupping his hands in the sunlight, Shen Zichuan's slender fingers looked like they were cradling a handful of clear amber. He couldn't stand the cold, but he was also averse to heat. He looked exhausted today, his body and mood both hopelessly languid. It's hot out. Shifu disdains greasy food, and the heat makes Tsa-an cranky. Tell the cook a few light dishes will do. You're still healing, so do as the physician and Shifu have told you, and get the kitchen to make you an individual portion. Shen Zichuan retreated half a step and returned to the coolness of the shade under the eaves. Ding Tao, go to the courtyard and call Shifu over. Ji Gong had chosen not to stay in the separate courtyard Shen Zichuan had offered him. Instead, he lived in the 3rd courtyard, together with Chao Tianya and the rest of the guards. People tended to fear loneliness as they aged. It was inevitable that he would grow melancholy without Qi Huilian around to squabble with. Fortunately, the guards were a mix of those from Li Bei and those who had come with Shen Zichuan from the embroidered uniform guard. All of them held Ji-style boxing in high esteem. They hoped to take a few pointers from Ji Gong, and liked to hang around him when they weren't on duty. All of them were young lads yet to be married. Ji Gong found them a boisterous and lively bunch, and it lifted his mood to be around them too. How indeed. He retired early and rose early these days. On this particular morning, he had woken at the crack of dawn and watched Chao Tianya and the rest practice boxing in the courtyard. After taking his tea, he came out for a stroll, whereupon he found Shen Zichuan abed. Folding his hands behind his back, he took another stroll around the manor, returning to find that Shen Zichuan still had yet to rise. As he stepped into the courtyard a 3rd time, he couldn't refrain from asking, "Why did you get up so late today? Are you ill?" Taken aback, Shen Zichuan was tongue-tied for a moment. "I overslept." Noting that he did seem a little tired today, Ji Gong said, "I understand there are many issues that want your attention right now, but you must still have a cure for your health. I'll cook tonight. We'll have some fish." I wonder when Ji Gong is gonna clue in. As they chatted, Xiao Qie returned. Spotting Ding Tao at the entrance of the courtyard, he knew Ji Gong had come. He took off his outer robe before entering, and asked Chen Yang as he washed his hands, "Did Shifu come this morning too?" Chen Yang answered truthfully, "Gongza bought Shifu a skylark a few days ago, and Shifu has made it his habit to take a stroll with the bird every morning when he gets up. Gongza was still sleeping when he came to our courtyard this morning, and he asked after him several times." Xiao Qie wiped his hands and walked along the veranda toward them. Before entering the courtyard, he made a disciple's bow to Ji Gong. He had been nothing but respectful to Ji Gong and Zuo Qianqiu back at Plum Blossom Manor, but Ji Gong could never forget the kick he had given Shen Zichuan 6 years ago. Now that Shen Zichuan and Xiao Qie had thrown in their lot together and were working toward a common goal, Ji Gong thought they had merely buried the hatchet and were no more than good friends. For Shen Zichuan's sake, he wouldn't give Xiao Qie a hard time. Ji Gong and Zuo Qianqiu were martial brothers, so etiquette demanded Xiao Qie bow to him. Ji Gong nodded and said simply, "No need for such formalities, your lordship." Xiao Qie took his seat. Ji Gong sat at the head of the table, and Xiao Qie and Shen Zichuan sat across from each other. As they ate, Ji Gong asked Xiao Qie about the suppression of the bandits and inquired after Zuo Qianqiu. Xiao Jie answered every question in detail, striving not to give a perfect answer, but rather to be honest and sincere. Ji Gong was a man who put great stock in sentiment. In his younger years, he had fumbled an assignment due to his drinking and caused his adoptive father, Ji Wufan, to lose the favor of the Guangcheng emperor. The incident had weighed heavily upon his heart. Later, after Duanzhou fell, he never touched another drop. He did not possess Qi Huilian's illustrious reputation, but he still retained great prestige among the embroidered uniform guard. It was for his sake that Ge Qingqing, along with the men under him, had been willing to go so far to help Shen Zichuan when he was first flogged and thrown into the imperial prison, and continued to extend their loyalty to him after. In the years Ji Gong had served as vice commander in the embroidered uniform guard, he had rarely taken advantage of his authority against others, and he had abhorred Pan Rugui and his ilk. Again and again, he had helped innocent citizens redress the injustices they suffered at the cost of offending quite a number of powerful men. Out of respect for an elder like this, Xiao Jie did not rely on cleverness or flattery to win him over. On the contrary, he had to bear all his sincerity. Only then would he stand a chance of getting Ji Gong to see him in a new, more favorable light. Their meal lasted an hour. Assuming the pair of them had many more important matters to discuss, Ji Gong didn't stay for long before taking his leave. Xiao Jie changed out of his robes beside Shen Zichuan, who was calculating their recent expenses with brush and ink. Bare-chested, Xiao Jie pulled over Shen Zichuan's free hand and placed it on his back. Shen Zichuan immediately felt the sweat on Xiao Jie's skin and looked up. That nervous, huh? Terrified, Xiao Jie swiftly dressed. I was worried he wouldn't find me earnest enough, and I would alienate Shifu even more. I've been so busy recently. I'll have to have a good talk with Shifu one of these days. A father's love for his child seeks nothing in return. Shen Zichuan set the brush down. There is no transactional exchange when it comes to Shifu, only heartfelt sincerity. Our Gongza has a long road ahead of him. That kick of yours really set you back. Xiao Jie slumped into the rattan chair and thought for a moment. If it had been my old man sitting there with us today, I might not have survived the meal. Still trepidatious, Xiao Jie put a hand to his own chest and studied Shen Zichuan, who was occupied with the accounts. As Xiao Jie watched, he picked up the brush and set it down repeatedly. His sleeve slid back to reveal a sliver of fair skin. His profile was serene. There was no one else in the room, and his collar, slightly loosened as a concession to the heat, exposed a snow-white expanse dotted with love bites. How delicate. Xiao Jie's mind drifted as he gazed blankly at Shen Zichuan. Thoughts swirled through, yet nothing concrete materialized. Lanzhou, Xiao Jie called out to him. Shen Zichuan's attention was elsewhere. He was thinking he should get Ge Qingqing to send him a few capable managers from Jueshi who could keep the account books, when Xiao Jie's voice broke through his thoughts. Though his eyes never left the page, he tilted his face slightly toward Xiao Jie. Yes? Jolting to his feet, Xiao Jie paced a few tight circles before squatting behind Shen Zichuan and embracing him. Shen Zichuan's focus was extraordinary. His hand, still moving over the page, didn't so much as wobble in its strokes. Xiao Jie nuzzled against Shen Zichuan's cheek from behind until Shen Zichuan's cheeks grew warm. Shen Zichuan had no idea what was up with Xiao Jie. The man never said a word as he felt Shen Zichuan up, holding him in his arms and clinging to him like glue. Just like that, Shen Zichuan sat in Xiao Jie's embrace and continued to calculate his accounts. When he ran into difficulty, He got Xiaoqia to stretch out his fingers for him to count on. Xiaoqia refused, and instead did the sums in his head without letting go of Shen Zichuan for an instant. Surprisingly, he was swift and accurate in his calculations. I was seeing that there was art on the next page, and I was like, do we have art of this? And we do. We do indeed have art of this. Why? Why are they so cute? Blue. Unexpected for the meathead to be good at math. I like that. Argongsa, Shen Zichuan said eventually, pushing the abacus aside. You have quite the knack for this. Calculate these for me, will you? Xiaoqia dragged the abacus back. Keep at it long enough and I'll fumble. This is complicated stuff. Better to hand it over to people who do this for a living. Do you know who in Chudu is best at arithmetic? That I don't know, Shen Zichuan admitted. Third Lady Hua Xiangyi. Then do you know who in Zhongbo is most skilled at luring the target away with diversionary tactics? Xiaoqia ventured a guess. Tantai Long? It's Xiao Tzuan. Shen Zichuan finally looked at him and said in all seriousness, nosing at me until my heart is pounding and I'm too preoccupied to work. I'm unworthy of such praise. Xiaoqia pressed in closer. It's only because I saw the young Gongzi sweating so delicately, with his robes in such disarray, that I've come over personally to warn him against prying eyes. Then you are a true gentleman, Shen Zichuan said, dipping his finger into his tea and tracing it along the back of Xiaoqia's hand, unlike me and my wayward thoughts. Stop. They're so cute. I think whenever things are going really well and there's a really cute scene, I'm afraid that means that, like, next thing you know, like, something horrible is gonna happen. And we're veering in a dangerous direction. But I need to not immediately come to that conclusion. I've been reading too much Meat Bun, that's the problem. I think that's the problem. But I'm just like, oh no, everything is so cute. What if something goes wrong? Yeah, exactly, Blue. It sounds like Meat Bun trauma. Okay. We are on the last chapter for the day. Chapter 119 on page 99, called Old Acquaintance. What thoughts? Let's hear them, Xiaoqia said. Their proximity was making Shen Zichuan too warm. He was sweating. He began to lift his hand away. Some things are better left unsaid. Xiaoqia caught Shen Zichuan's finger and laughed. Are they? Then you listen, and I'll say them. Shen Zichuan dropped his eyes to the pages of his account books. Xiaoqia held Shen Zichuan's fingertip and followed his gaze. I haven't even started, and you're already feeling warm. Shen Zichuan looked askance at Xiaoqia and mouthed, because of you. Xiaoqia looked at Shen Zichuan for a moment, then ducked his head, burying his face in the crook of Shen Zichuan's neck. All his earlier feelings had dissolved with this one glance at Shen Zichuan, turning into a raging torrent that surged from his heart through his entire body. Yet no matter how these tempestuous waves battered him, he was hesitant to exert so much as the tiniest bit of force in this embrace. Over the years he had spent in Chudu, that kick he had given Shen Zichuan the day they met had turned, silently and secretly, into jolts of pain that seized Xiaoqia's heart whenever he thought of it. I hadn't even thought of the fact that, like, that was brought up and what he might be thinking about it. Now I am sad. The heavy storm they had weathered together had scoured that turbulent sea of love and hate, until only a crystal-clear lake remained. Xiao Qie retracted his talons, bowing his head in submission before the word love. That's a line. Shen Zichuan tugged his hand gently free and laced his fingers with Xiao Qie's, bumping his ear gently against Xiao Qie's heavy head on his shoulder. Have you fallen asleep? When Xiao Qie looked up, his voice was hoarse. Oh, how I love you. Shen Zichuan was stunned. Staring into his eyes, Xiao Qie enunciated each word as he repeated, I love you. Dumbstruck, Shen Zichuan took a moment to find his voice. But Xiao Qie couldn't wait any longer. He kissed Shen Zichuan hard, as if with that kiss, he could convey all the love in his heart he could never express with words alone. The cool breeze in the courtyard stirred the bamboo blinds, and under the eaves, the shadows of the flowers shifted with the slanting light of the sun. That golden light, having slipped around the garden, now lay across the floor at their feet. There, I wasn't expecting that to well, see, Xiao Jia has already proclaimed his love in so many words. He just hasn't actually said I love you before now. And I guess for some reason I wasn't expecting him to do that yet, or like I don't know. But also there's so much stuff about light. The golden light, having slipped around the garden, now lay across the floor at their feet. We've got like that, like I don't know, I've highlighted some quotes before, like, and in previous volumes that have to do with the light chasing one of them, or like following them, or like running away from the light. There's like sinister light, there's like positive light. It's very interesting. Like, I know light is a very common thing to make metaphors about, but for some reason it just seems like it comes up like a lot in this series. So it feels very thematic. The Beiyuan hunting grounds were not far from Suzhou, accessible via a bridleway that connected the two. Snowcrest could reach it in half a day of riding. The next morning, Xiao Qie took Chen Yang and Ding Tao to survey the site, while Shen Zichuan spent the time finishing his accounting for their time in Suzhou and meeting with Zhou Gui and Kongling to make adjustments to their plan for the Suzhou garrison troops. I'll admit I hoped quite a number of people might come forward to answer our recruitment call, but I never expected this many. Zhou Gui was practically glowing. With this kind of help, we can expand our fields again next year. Kongling, too, appeared delighted as he explained to Shen Zichuan, there's a shortage of grain outside our walls, which Suzhou can fill. To many of those in desperate situations, this will be timely help that not only meets their most urgent needs, but also prevents them from turning to banditry. Vice Commander, we'll have to trouble you for the military equipment for the garrison. The way things are going, there won't be a bandit left in Suzhou's territory by spring next year. Zhou Gui had been up the whole night making plans. If we can also help Dunzhou and Duanzhou feed their people, the bandits from Mount Law will fall apart on their own. It's true that the recruitment so far has been a success, but your excellency cannot rely on this alone, Shen Zichuan cautioned. Suzhou has been unable to produce such a large volume of food because everyone, from top to bottom, has worked together toward one purpose for the past 5 years. But Duanzhou shares a border with Biansha. Even if they have a mind to till their land and sow crops, they won't be able to do it. And we mustn't forget. The dragon throne sits empty, and troubled times breed ruthless men of great ambition. If there is a Lei Jingzhe on Mount Law, perhaps Chazhou has their own Lei Jingzhe as well. Suzhou has only begun to take its first steps. We needn't rush. That's right, Kongling nodded. Our most pressing task now is the matter of household registration. Many of the people in Suzhou today fled here from other places. They have no identifying documents on them. If they wish to settle down in Suzhou, they will need an identity. Shen Zichuan paused in thought. During the years of Yongyi, the Eastern Palace pushed for a yellow register system to be checked and verified by layers of prefects, district magistrates, and townships of the various lands. Suzhou is not so densely populated yet. Since you are no longer under the Empire's rule, you can abolish the original registers and allow Suzhou to develop its own, making sure everyone is accounted for and no vagrants are wandering through. Once such a registry is finalized, Suzhou can collect taxes based on the register, and the prefecture's accounts will be clearer too. In that case, let's get to work on it in the next few days. Zhou Gui paused for a moment, then continued. The only concern now is the Qidong garrison troops. It's been so long, Kongling agreed. Why is there no news from Qidong? Shen Zichuan had formed his own speculation about this delay. If Chudu wished to stop Xiao Qie from returning to Libei, they should have mobilized Qi Juyin at once. She could have stopped Xiao Qie at the border of Zhongbo a month ago. But they hadn't. Instead, they'd sent Han Jin, an armchair strategist who was all talk and no action. The Imperial Army had taken the son of lawful birth from the Han clan captive outside Dancheng, and he was still being held in Suzhou's prison even now. Qidong's troops were distributed between its 5 commanderies, such that Qi Juyin could assemble 100,000 men within half a month. Yet there was still no sign of her. It was late in the evening when Shen Zichuan emerged from the Zhou Manor. He'd assumed Xiao Qie would be still on his way back to the city, and so hadn't been in a hurry to return home. As he descended the stairs, the path ahead was bathed in light. Fei Sheng, carrying a lantern, lit the way for Shen Zichuan. Shen Zichuan had been so busy with other matters these last few days that he'd had no opportunity to speak with Fei Sheng. In the intervening time, Fei Sheng had tried his best to cozy up to Chen Yang and the others, and was the most diligent in serving tea and pouring water for Ji Gong. This man, a veteran who had tumbled his way out of Chudu, was presently playing attendant for Shen Zichuan, keeping silent as they walked, so as not to interrupt Shen Zichuan's thoughts. From all appearances, he was content simply to hold the lantern. The streets were still full of people at this hour. Fei Sheng was carefully guiding Shen Zichuan through the crowds when he heard Shen Zichuan speak up. I heard you recommended yourself to his lordship before he went out to the hunting grounds this morning. Gu Jin has yet to recover from his injuries, so I thought of going along with his lordship on his behalf, Fei Sheng replied, his expression unchanging. Shen Zichuan turned back to the road and said nothing more. As they passed through the gate of the residence, Chao Tianya took over the lantern. Gu Jin was still in the courtyard, so Fei Sheng wasn't needed for guard duty. He went back alone without being told. If Master keeps giving him the cold shoulder, he may come to bear you a grudge, Chao Tianya remarked. Shen Zichuan cast a glance over his shoulder as he stepped onto the long walkway. Fei Sheng had already turned through the arching moon gate on the other side. I have a mind to use him, but he may not think much of me. He held a higher rank in the embroidered uniform guard than you did. He was one of Han Cheng's right-hand men before the Emperor's untimely death, and relied on Han Cheng's influence. There must be a good reason Han Cheng wants him dead. It's been days since he arrived in Suzhou, yet he's shown no intention of opening up to me. Pausing in his steps, Shen Zichuan smiled at Xiao Tianya. It wasn't me he was gunning for when he risked everything during our flight from Chudu, but Sa'an. Sa'an is the second lawful son of the Prince of Li Bei. Oh, I read that totally wrong. It wasn't me he was gunning for when he risked everything during our flight from Chudu, but Sa'an. Sa'an is the second lawful son of the Prince of Li Bei. The heir of Li Bei was severely injured at the time, and everyone thought Sa'an was going back to take up Xiao Fengshu's mantle. If there was already a rift forming between Fei Sheng and Han Cheng, rather than make endless concessions to achieve his aims in the capital, why not leave Chudu for Li Bei and carve out another path for himself? Becoming the hero who saved Xiao Chie's life is enough to secure him a place in Li Bei for life. By now, Xiao Tianya too had some understanding of Fei Sheng. Gu Jin can't travel easily now that he's wounded. Fei Sheng recommended himself this morning because he's hoping to take Gu Jin's place. A pity his lordship is a hard-hearted man who won't give him a chance. But Fei Sheng was circumspect. He had been so attentive toward Ji Gong, precisely so he would have something to fall back on in the event that he was rejected. He'd approached Xiao Qie today, partially in an attempt to sound him out. When he saw Xiao Qie had no intention of using him, he had set his sights on Shen Zichuan instead. The man has real talent, Shen Zichuan said, no less than Gu Jin. It would be a pity to cast him aside. As they spoke, they arrived at the courtyard. Gu Jin got up to instruct the kitchen to serve dinner, but Shen Zichuan called for him to wait. He should be back soon. Shen Zichuan turned toward the house. Go wait for him at the gates. Yet, several hours into the night, Xiao Qie had still not returned. Half the candles had burned down before Shen Zichuan heard the rustle of movement outside. Xiao Qie strode into the courtyard, but did not enter the room immediately. He was covered in dust, so he stripped off his outer robe before turning back, drawing Shen Zichuan's attention to the people behind him. Lanzhou. Shen Zichuan looked past Xiao Qie and saw Chen Yang and Gu Jin walking in, supporting someone between them, their face concealed. I lost my place. Their face concealed in the darkness of the courtyard. The person's outer robe was in shreds. Even his trousers were torn. He was wearing a pair of straw shoes that had split at the soles, and his legs were caked to the knee in mud. He seemed to sway on his feet, and had to rely on Chen Yang and Gu Jin to hold him up as he babbled. Disheveled and filthy, with his hair loose and face dirty, the man was a sorry sight. As he came under the faint light of the lanterns, Shen Zichuan suddenly recognized him. Lord Yu? You, I don't think I know who this is. I feel like I should know who this is, but think about how many characters are in these books. The man shuddered violently, flailing against the hands that propped him up as he peered through the dimness in disbelief. A pair of eyes peeked out from behind his tangled hair. He froze for a moment when he saw Shen Zichuan. Then he gulped, his mouth opening and closing, and broke down bawling. Thank heaven I made it. I'm fixin' to keel over from exhaustion. Yu Xiaozai cried hoarsely, wiping tears off his filthy face. Yu Xiaozai. I know the name, but I still can't remember who that is. Vice Commander, the Grand Secretary's no more. I almost got done in, too. I've been fleeing and hiding the whole way here. What kind of life is this? Startled, Shen Zichuan strode forward and asked in a grim voice, Secretariat Elder Hai, how did he die? Yu Xiaozai's words were choked with sobs. He wanted to answer, but all that came out were wails as he shook his head, beyond words. He cried so hard he was on the verge of sliding to the ground, even with Gu Jin and Chen Yang's support. At last, overwhelmed with grief and hoarse from exhaustion. He said in the official dialect, The Grand Secretary risked his life to protest in vain. Well, we have art. I guess this is the thing that had to happen after good things were happening. This is that thing. And now we have this. Take him to calm down and get him a change of clothes, Xiao Chia said. Gujin, tell the kitchen to send over some soup. Those wretched sobs were still ringing in the air. Shen Zichuan had frozen where he stood. He had considered hundreds of possibilities, but he'd never expected Hai Liangyi would die. Hai Liangyi was the pillar holding up the nation, the stabilizing force in Chudu. He had remained steady in the Grand Secretariat through all the years when the Hua and Pan factions were at the height of their power. Even if Han Chung wanted to install a descendant from his own clan on the throne after Li Jianheng's death, anyone, both within and without the imperial court, could see that Hai Liangyi was still the best possible minister with whom to entrust the child. Xiao Chia took Shen Zichuan's arm, bringing him gently out of his numb shock. I found him held captive by a group of bandits a few miles west of the hunting grounds. He had a hard time getting out of Chudu, and he was robbed after leaving Dancheng, so he walked all the way here barefoot. He has a letter on him, from Chen Yu to you, and he has news about Chudu and Qidong. Yu Xiaozai. Blue, is it the guy who kept slipping into slang because he was from the countryside? Well, that would make sense, because he was doing that just now. The one who went with Shen Zichuan to inspect Xiao Chia's house. Okay. I remember that. I just don't remember, like, the people that were there. But that must be him. Yu Xiaozai still needed help walking when he entered the main room. Weak from hunger, he clutched his bowl and gulped down his food before they began their conversation. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he ate, and he choked and coughed through his mouthfuls, as though he couldn't swallow fast enough. Only when his hunger abated somewhat did he cover his face with a fresh handkerchief and wipe it clean. It's truly a stroke of luck I could live long enough to see you, Vice Commander. I've got Lord Tsen's letter with me. I kept it close to my chest this whole way, for fear the bandits would search me and take it. Yu Xiaozai sat back on his heels and struggled to find the words. Before I begin, there is something I must tell you. The emperor about to ascend the throne is a woman. That's the end of the chapter. That's where we have to end today. Let's talk about that. I'm sorry he clutched his what? What did he clutch? Wait, where did it say he clutched something? He clutched his bowl. He clutched his bowl and gulped down his food. That was what it said. What what a nice way to end the week. Did you hear ball? What did you hear? I don't even know what you would have heard from that, but I don't know. Maybe I sound like, maybe I have a little bit of a southern accent on the word bowl sometimes. I don't think I do, but I might have thrown you off. Well, no, you were distracted. Okay. So, I'm very like, whoa, that's like, I didn't know that a woman could possibly ascend to the throne in this situation. Although, I guess it makes sense because they were, well, no, yeah, I didn't expect that they were worried about a possible heir, whether it was a boy or a girl. But I still just, like, wasn't thinking about that. What a way to end a chapter. What a way to end our week of reading. Honestly, very exciting. And I don't know, I feel like we normally don't end up on, like, a terrible cliffhanger, and that is not a terrible cliffhanger, but it is something where I'm like, oh my god, we have to stop here. There's gonna be, like, immediately after this is, like, an information download, and we have to stop here. It's, like, a real cliffhanger. But I'm also partly distracted because of just, like, what else happened this stream. I'm still just like, wait, Xiaoqia said I love you. Like, that happened. And also, I keep waiting for, what's his name? Yao Wenyu. I keep waiting for Yao Wenyu to show up again because I want to, like, see him with Chao Tianya and see what the heck happens with that. So I was, like, in the back of my head, I was, like, hoping that we would see him. And part of me is, like, he was the student of Hai Liang Yi. So he might be around, or he might show up at some point too. And I'm just, like, hoping for that. It's every stream that we don't, like, see him, I'm like, no, please come back. Yes, in the name of Henry's spirit that is not with us today, I need to say this. Yaoi Wenyu. Exactly. Yaoi Wenyu. What's the other thing he said was Chao Tian Yaoi. I know. I really am. That's, like, a side ship that I am impatient for. And we literally just had one scene of them meeting and, like, flirting. And we haven't seen them in a while, but I can't get them out of my head. So, Blue, did you have, like, you said earlier something about what we were talking about, like, after the sex scene, the way it was stylized or something like that? You said, what did you say? You, because you said, if it's a stylistic choice, then this might deserve a whole analysis. I'm just, like, very curious about your thoughts. I'll probably, like, glean more from that after I, like, reread this bit of chapters. Because in the moment, I was just like, oh my god, this is happening. And also, I didn't comment on it, but I love when you were, like, calling Xiaoqia a dog. Because he just bites Shen Sichuan. Very, very accurate. But yeah, I have to go in a second, but I would love to talk about that in the Discord. Someone had to do it. I know, like, there are so many of them. You are correct. You are right. So, I guess we're gonna pick up on who's the new emperor on the throne. We're gonna find out next week. Very exciting. Thank y'all for coming to the stream. I really appreciate it. I will see you. Well, I'll see you in the Discord, and I will see you next week for the stream. Have a good one.